ultimately provide um, provide, whether it be a legacy that they want to leave behind for their families or a strong economic base within the community because the property can compete in the market which it is in. In 2023, we were blessed with a program to target on the South Side. The long name, city programs like to have really long names. So I'm going to give you my nickname for it. It's the South Shore Pilot Program. And the pilot program is really asking those questions. What will it take to preserve units that are shared ownership? How much, how little, and what kind of hand up we can give so that those units are not lost to economic movement within the community. I am glad to say in 2023, we were able to hit many numbers, right? I can go through the number pieces with you, but really what's really impactful for me is the number of properties that we know, but for Center for Shared Ownership intervention that was in distressed condo call or distressed housing call would have been converted to rental and or home ownership would have lost its footing. And so we are glad to say that we believe we've impacted over 1,000 families. We've worked in over 56 properties. We have engaged hand in hand and continue to engage with them. Over 36 strong cooperative and condos to maintain them in the foothold of home ownership in that shared space. So really happy that these discussions and with all of the movement of COVID, that we really began to look at what do we mean when we talk about home ownership, wealth creation, and deteriorating that base. And that so many across the nation is looking at that option. But just as everyone is looking at that option, I have to call some caution. Because when we try to redefine what really is shared ownership, its responsibility, and the choice of it, it becomes, again, a mixed ball of wax. And also we learned that many people don't know what they don't know. And it gave us an opportunity to think about how best we reframe the work so that more people understand what we mean by shared ownership and the choices of shared ownership. To that, I will stop and see if Rachel or Kevin want to add anything to our background. All right, I must have done a good job. Thank you.
Thanks,
Ayanna, back to
you. Yes, thank you. So Calvin, would you like to introduce the work that Chicago Community Loan Fund has been doing in this space?
Sure. Thanks, Ayanna. So again, folks, I'm Calvin Holmes. I'm president of the Chicago Community Loan Fund, and we are a $176 million certified CDFI, and we are serving today actually over 200 developers and shared ownership housing organizations in metropolitan Chicago. So Ita, as you know, that's a huge jump from where you were when you were on our board, but we thank you for being on our board and helping us put the foundation down around our growth. I also would like to thank, even though he's not on the call right now, Senator Simmons for chairing this task force and working to get the Cooperative Housing Fund in place to support capital repairs needed at housing co-ops across the region and the state. I also want to thank each of you for joining the Cooperative Task Force. We're really glad that you're a part of this effort. We also look forward to sharing our successes with these shared ownership communities. And we also want to learn from you about the ways that you think that we can make these communities even healthier. CCLF has been committed to housing co-ops since our inception because we know that they are very important part of the housing continuum, and that they allow housing co-op members to build a modest level of equity to build some wealth and to close the wealth gap by a little bit more. We also are very inspired by Rochdale principles, which many of the housing cooperatives that we support look to. And those principles are that they maintain voluntary and open membership. They maintain democratic member control. They emphasize member economic participation. They are very autonomous and independent. They also promote training and information sharing and being part of a network of cooperation amongst other cooperatives. And last but not least, demonstrating an undyed commitment to concern for the community. So CCF lending spans the south, west, and north sides of the city, with our first loan being to the North American Students of Cooperation in Hyde Park for $45,000 back in 1993. And now we've provided over $15.6 million in capital for acquisition and rehab for 31 associations. Our lending has created 1,132 apartments in associations that have ranged in size from 4 units all the way up to 302 units. The 302 units was in support of the Cambridge Manor Tenant Council in Bronzeville. Plus, our co-ops are homes to people in their 20s, and it goes all the way up to people who are in their 70s. We also completed a study of housing co-ops. We also completed a study of housing co-op borrowers in 2018 with a 59% response rate, where we heard from them about the merits of their communities. So our cooperatives cited the following benefits of being a housing co-op. First and foremost was that their rents were usually below market and increased at or below inflation, which was a good benefit for those housing co-ops. Secondly, people who live in a number of our housing co-ops actually live better on a lower salary. And believe it or not, they also mentioned that they can maintain a healthier diet. They also live comfortably and are able to provide activities for their kids and also engage in a lot of volunteer activities. And then also importantly, they're able to invest in their education and schooling, which is wonderful. And many of them also start businesses, which is a great benefit of being in a shared ownership property. And then they have enough money in their budgets where they can buy a car, they can travel, and they can even save money, which many of them couldn't do beforehand. And then last but not least, being in a cooperative prevents some level of displacement in the neighborhoods where the buildings are located. So in wrapping up my remarks, let me say that these quality of life benefits motivated CCLF to partner with the Chicago Rehab Network to start the Center for Shared Ownership in 2018. And our website, the Cooperative Communities of Chicago, please go take a look at it if you haven't seen it. And David Feinberg is on the call, and he manages this website for us. But it's called the Cooperative Communities of Chicago, otherwise chicagocoop.net, which is an online service connecting co-ops to prospective members, as well as providing resources and tools. And finally, I know I'm thanking Senator Simmons without him being on this call just yet, but his determination to make the housing cooperative more sustainable by working to get the Cooperative Housing Fund legislation in place will provide subsidies from the Illinois Housing Development Authority that are needed to assist properties that need critical repairs due to their aging structures. And I know that Cammie is on the call. Where are you, Cammie?
I'm here. Yep.
There you are. Thank you for joining us.
Oh, my pleasure. It's an honor to be here. Thank you.
We're really happy to have you on the call. And please give our regards to Kristen and let her know how much we appreciate her support. So that concludes my remarks. And now I'm passing the baton to Kevin Jackson, who's the executive director and our partner at the Chicago Rehab Network. Kevin?
Hey, Calvin, thanks a lot. Welcome, everybody. Very happy to be here. Hard to follow all of Calvin's illustrious remarks about the importance of co-op. We certainly believe in that. We at the Rehab Network feel the Center for Shared Ownership is just being part and central to our mission of community empowerment and development without displacement. We've constantly been looking to find solutions in a landscape that continues to get very, very difficult. And our thinking about it, one of the key things is leadership. And you think about the different people that are on this call and around the Rehab Network and across our broader community, it's that leadership that can really call for accountability, call for thinking for solutions and building back better, as the phrase was given. I've been very impressed with the work of Janae and the Center for Shared Ownership because of the methodical approach. And I'm not going to reiterate all that, but it's been, as someone that's worked in community capacity building development for an entire lifetime, it's just been really a hallmark of thinking through how to make this stuff have lasting consequences as opposed to a plan sitting on a shelf. So with that, I'm just delighted to be a part of this group. I'm delighted to be an early investor, not me myself, but the Rehab Network into CCLF back in the day when we had our own loan fund, the proceeds of which we decided by the board of directors to invest in Calvin's work, and the growth has, shown for itself. We believe investing in communities matter. And so we think this is going to be another chapter that we can all be proud about. I do want to share, I had an interesting call after my morning call. I happened chance to be on a meeting with the city, and an old commissioner called me at 12 o'clock today and said, Kevin, are you still doing the 5-year plan? Is there still reporting going on? And I'm like, holy smokes, Jack, what are you doing calling me now? But we had a nice conversation about the history and where we're at today, and the need is what he was trying to underscore. He was working with some aldermen, he said, and just the importance of getting that information out there. It's not always pretty, but then it enables us to act. So thanks, Ayanna. Thanks, everyone, for being here.
Thank you, Kevin. Thank you, Calvin and Janae, for that introduction. Rachel, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I mean, I'll just say thank you for being here. This is the first of what we think are 4 meetings. Ayanna will go through some more detail later, but Senator Simmons will be here shortly, and I think we'll probably just start introducing ourselves in our connection to cooperative housing.
Yes.
Okay.
So,
Ayanna,
yes, Janae.
Ayanna, if I may take one more second, I forgot to introduce the CSO crew. I'm very proud of my CSO crew. We won't say we stole anyone. We just convinced everyone to come by. So from the CCLF group, we have David Feinberg on our CSO crew. Linda Green is with CSO, Dana Wallace, and of course, Ayanna Thomas. This is the CSO crew that's making it happen, and hopefully with these high-level folks on board, we hope to have an even more impactful year in 2024.
Thank you, Janae. So I think it's important for all of us to know who's in the room, who will be helping us along as we move forward. So we're going to use a tool called Hot Potato. It's really simple. I'm going to call on someone to introduce themselves, and then you're going to call on somebody else in the Zoom room to introduce themselves too. You're going to say your name, your agency, company, housing organization, and then what your relationship is to shared ownership. So I am Thomas. I am with Center for Shared Ownership. I have worked in affordable housing and cooperative housing specifically for nearly 20 years on and off. I was with Chicago Mutual Housing Network years ago. And after that was with Chicago Rehab Network, moving into LaSalle Bank and then Illinois Housing Development Authority. And after a stint with the City of Chicago, I'm now back in affordable housing with Center for Shared Ownership. So I'm great. I'm really happy to be back. I'm going to call on Wesley to introduce himself.
Thank you, Ayanna. Wesley Walker with the Chicago Community Trust. And our connection basically has been to fund initiatives regarding housing, specifically with Chicago Rehab Network and the Chicago Community Loan Fund, the work that they're doing, the policy work with regard to shared ownership, co-op ownership. Hope to continue that support in so many ways. I have been involved with basically supporting housing through my years at LISC, supporting community development organizations doing multifamily housing. We also provided funding for Chicago Rehab Network as well as CCLF while I was at LISC. So, and that's been a while. So that's my connection, and I will call on my colleague Chandra Richardson, who's also had extensive connection with housing funding through her work here at the Trust and other ways. So, Chandra.
Good afternoon, everyone. Chandra Richardson here at the Trust. Thank you, Wesley. So I think, just for brevity's sake, the hat I'm wearing here is the one that Wes just talked about, where I'm supporting the funding for homeownership strategy here at the Trust. There are several other key initiatives that I support across the Trust. So some of you may know that or not, but happy to be here. I do need to give a slight housekeeping note that unfortunately I have to drop off at 2. So I do apologize in advance for that, but I work very closely with Wes. I will pop it over to you, Rachel. I'm sure a lot of people know you, but it's good to see you. So pop it to you.
Hi, nice to see you too. I'm glad you're here. I have been at the Rehab Network for 26 years and have done everything from training to policy to research. And my first week at the Rehab Network, and I was asked by my new boss, Tony Austin, why I really wanted to work there. And I said, well, I want to do co-ops, of course, back in 1995. And Tony Austin said, oh, Chicago hates co-ops, Rachel, give it up. So it's taken me all this time to be a magnet and find other people who agree that it's has to be part of our toolbox. And I'll pass it on. I'll pass it on to Yvonne.
Hello, everybody. Thanks, Rachel. Good to be with everyone. Yvonne Arenas. I'm with the Institute for Research on Race and Public Policy at UIC. And so we look a lot about the ways in which housing plays into racial inequities and racial inequities affect housing, but also here as part of the Pilsen Housing Cooperative, and been working with them more or less since they kind of got started and had their first building, and just really trying to think through what are some of the ways in which community-based efforts around cooperative housing can support changes in policy, in helping support neighborhoods to stabilize with gentrification or redevelopment. And I'll pass it off to another PICO member, Dosha.
And Yvonne, before you pass it off, I just want to clap my hands for all the work that you've done with PICO. It's been outstanding.
Awesome. Thank you, Yvonne. This is Dosha, also with PICO, Pilsen Housing Cooperative. I'm working in a project management capacity. I have been working in the Pilsen and Little Village communities for almost the entirety of my adult life. I won't tell you how long that is. And really excited to be working with PICO now, working on an acquisition project and also on a potential new construction project at 18th and Peoria. So thinking about new construction in the co-op space, which I think is an exciting potential move here.
Can you pass it over to someone else, Dosha?
Oh yeah, hot potato. I'll pass it to Megan Hart.
Hi, good afternoon, Megan Hart, LISC. LISC is not really significantly involved in the co-op space, so here to learn more about it and learn how we can support some of our communities through their quality of life plan with learning more about different types of strategies, because this comes up a lot. So excited to be here. And I will pass it to Cami. Is it Cami? That's how you pronounce it?
Yep.
Okay.
You're muted, Cammie.
Tammy, you're on mute.
No, it's audio problems, Tammy. Okay. Well,
Cammie's
you
having
work that out.
some tech problems.
Right.
So Ayana, do you
Okay,
want to pass it
Tony,
on?
would you like to introduce yourself? Yes. Tony, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure, and apologies, folks. I am fighting a cold today, so you're going to get the raspy voice, the deep voice I always wanted to have. I'm with PNC Bank, and I'm the territory exec for the Midwestern Community Development Lending and Investing Strategy. And quite frankly, we, like a number of banks, are sitting on the sidelines trying to figure out how to be an effective partner. So I am, like Megan, eager to hear more and learn more and figure out how we can bring the bank to the table for solutions. And I'm going to hot potato over to the person sitting underneath me on the screen, my friend Linda Green.
Hi, I am Linda Green. I'm a consultant with the Center for Shared Ownership. I always stutter when I have to say this, 40 plus year of experience in affordable housing and housing cooperatives. Started my career with the Neighborhood Institute, which was a Shore Bank's nonprofit affiliate, developing housing cooperatives. So I've come full circle after all these years, spent my whole career doing this type of work. I've also lived in a housing cooperative for approximately 37 years. So I am very familiar with this area, and I'm really happy to be a part of this effort. Have clearly come full circle. So I am
Linda,
going
you
to
aged
pass.
really, really well.
You said what?
That's a
What'd you
compliment,
say,
my dear.
Calvin?
You look
I'm going to pass it to, let's see, what about Steph O'Connor?
Hi, y'all. I'm just eating my lunch here, so I'm sorry I'm off camera, but it's great to meet a bunch of you. My name is Steph O'Connor. I work on the homeownership team with the City of Chicago's Department of Housing. And we are sort of taking our first steps towards supporting co-ops and community land trust and shared equity models of homeownership here. It's something we've known about for a long time, and there's some comparisons, but it's a bit new to us. So here to learn, here to support, and figure out ways that we can do a better job of using government funds to support this. I will pass it to Brel.
Hello, my name is Brel Hutton Okbaleke. I apologize if my audio is coming through a little choppy. I was hearing some other choppy audio, so it's probably me. I'm with North American Students of Cooperation. We're a 501c3 technical assistance provider for housing cooperatives in the US and Canada. We've worked with the Stone Soup Housing Cooperative, Evergreen Limited Equity Housing Co-op, the Cumbia Housing Co-ops, and we predominantly focus on group equity and or zero equity housing co-ops as our kind of like main core competency. We've been in operation since 1968 and provide not just technical service or technical support services, but also we administer a really small loan fund, which has still been really helpful in getting smaller housing co-ops off the ground. We're really excited to to continue to work in Chicago. We're based in Chicago, but I'm calling y'all from Madison, Wisconsin. Our staff's kind of distributed. Yeah, excited to be here, and I'll pass it on to James.
Hey, everybody. Thanks for having me. James Yellen. I'm at Enterprise Community Partners on our National Upward Mobility team, where I support a variety of work related to community ownership models, including some work in the past and in the present to some extent with housing cooperatives, mostly in California, increasingly now that I'm on this national team working elsewhere, and I'm really excited to deepen that work in Chicago. Let me see, who hasn't gone? David, have you gone? I don't think you've gone.
Hi, everyone. David Feinberg with CCLF. I have the pleasure and privilege of serving as our Director of Coaching and Knowledge Transfer. Calvin gave the overview of how we're connected to the co-op work in Chicago. And I also have the privilege of being a liaison to the Center for Shared Ownership with Rachel and Janae and Ayana and Dana, Kevin, and Linda and the rest of the crew. And just delighted to be here. I will pass it on to Itai. I don't think we've heard from you.
Itai, we can't hear you.
There you go.
Was it me? You passed it on to Itai? Oh, hi.
Yeah.
Hi, everyone. I'm Itai Zalalam with the UIC Borges Center. The Borges Center at UIC has been around for over 40 years. It is an applied research and technical assistance unit that supports community development in general, but with special focus on affordable housing. I have been at the Borges Center for over 25 years now. I started my community work with the Voice of the People in Uptown, developing affordable housing in that area of the city. And moving on, working with the Chicago Rehab Network with Kevin and Rachel long time ago. Also work with the Chicago Rehab Network now, providing training in the empowerment series. I just finished my latest one Friday, and I have been involved in that process for, again, 25 years. We also did some significant research back a long time ago when the Mutual Housing Network was spearheading that effort, the cooperative housing effort. And we're involved in that space right now as we're working on promoting affordable housing. And I'm very happy to be a part of this discussion. Thanks. Pass it on to, I don't know, Kevin. Have you been introduced or?
Yeah, I was introduced in general. I mean, I could wax on eloquently or not so much. Let's pick it up with Ray Arroyo.
Sorry about that, folks. I'm having some technical issues myself. Good afternoon. My name is Ray Arroyo. I am with the Resurrection Project. We are a technical assistance site, and we have been around for about 33 years. We are known in the community for providing services when it comes to affordable housing, equity, and sustainable home ownership. We are also an organization that's known for our financial education and also financial stabilization. Looking forward to know more about what everybody has to share, and I am here kind of filling in for Kristen, who unfortunately had a different I'm sorry, she had a conflict of schedule, so I'm here on her behalf and on behalf of TRP. Thank you.
Okay, I think we just have Mary left.
Hi, my name's Mary Griffin. I'm here because Rachel invited me. And I'm with the Cooperative Development Foundation. We're a national nonprofit. We've been around, we'll be celebrating 80 years next year. And we support cooperative development, cross-sector cooperative development. So we've supported housing, food, home care, worker, and any kind. And right now we have an affordable housing initiative where we're trying to lift up shared equity models around the country and sort of be a voice for them and find out and connect people who are working on these issues across the country. Thanks.
Awesome. Thank you, everyone. We're so happy you've decided to join this effort. And so now, as we continue to wait for a delayed Senator Simmons, we're going to go ahead and move into our group discussion, which is all the meat and potatoes of this meeting. How can we establish the policies, resources, and leadership to support housing cooperative in Illinois, specifically in Chicago? So even the things around, you're not even quite sure what you don't know. I don't know what I don't know. Let's start bringing these issues forward so that we can start focusing in on them as we move along in this housing task force process. Does anyone want to get started, or should we ask specifically around the policy? So for instance, we would say, what is the existing policy that exists that promotes cooperative housing development? And then what policies do we need to create in order to promote and develop affordable housing cooperatives and shared ownership?
So Ayanna, I jumped off because I saw that Senator Simmons is jumping on. And if I could just ask us to put a hold on that and let the senator give his remarks. And I believe with his remarks, it also, deepen our thoughts and responses as well.
Thank you.
Ayanna?
Hi, Senator Simmons.
Hi, everybody.
Hi. Welcome to the Housing Task Force meeting. It's time for you to enter your remarks to the ledger. So here we go.
Okay, wonderful. You're breaking up a bit, so I want to make sure you can actually hear me. Okay,
Yes.
cool. Hey, everybody. I'm Mike Simmons. I serve as a state senator for the 7th District on the far north side of Chicago. Thank you so much for being a part of this task force to stand up the Cooperative Housing Fund for Chicago and the state of Illinois. You don't need me to tell you how important cooperative housing is to the overall housing crisis. I'm just happy that we've got all of you assembled to put some intellectual umph into this effort and some time into this effort so that we can flesh this out in a way that will just give us a fighting chance of standing up the Cooperative Housing Fund in a way that is informed by many different community perspectives. And I see that we've got a broad spectrum of community voices and leaders here. So that is an excellent start. But we are here to support your work. I'm here to support your work. The reason I passed the bill to set up the Cooperative Housing Fund is because in the district I represent, cooperative housing is some of the most stable housing that we have for low and moderate income households. And I'm thoroughly invested in making sure that we continue to have cooperative housing and all types of low and moderate income housing for another generation or two, or 200 years, as I like to say. So we can't do it without you. I encourage you to you all know a lot. I want you to bring what you know to the table so that in several months from now, when this task force wraps up, we can go back to the Illinois Housing and Development Authority and we can say, hey, here are the recommendations that have come from this brilliant group of stakeholders. We've already got the funding to get this up and going in the summer and in ensuing years. So we just need to know how to shape this in a way that meets the needs in our communities across the state. So I appreciate you being here. Heather Sanger here is my chief of staff. She's going to be helping to support this task force as well. So I want to make sure you get a chance to meet her. And that's all.
Senator, this is Janae Moreno. How are you?
Lovely, thank you.
So Senator, when we were at, I think it was UIC conference, you shared kind of your own personal story about cooperative housing and living um, in cooperative housing. Can you share that with the group so they don't think I'm making it up?
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, I'm going to give you the pithy version of this. Sometimes elected officials are unnecessarily long-winded. I'm going to do that to you today. Look, I grew up in public housing on the north side of Chicago. My family was able to move into Lincoln Square in the early 80s as the first Black family to move into that community and integrate the neighborhood as a result of a Supreme Court decision that required that the city of Chicago start desegregating public housing. I'm proud of that. I talk about that. I lead with that. I grew up in public housing. I also have an Ivy League degree. I also grew up in a household with a loving mother and grandmother and extended network of folks that poured everything into me to allow me to be in front of you today as a state senator who is trailblazing and shattering all sorts of glass ceilings. And what I want is the next generation of people to have literally that exact same thing. That's the vision. It's so simple. Is that, I want the next generation of families like mine and so many other plural and diverse families from every continent, every racial and ethnic group to be able to live in communities that are 2 blocks from the lakefront or are within a mile of a park. Or in the case of where I grew up, right, there's 2 grocery stores within a quarter mile of our apartment. Even though we were low income, we had all those amenities. And so, folks that get a chance to live in cooperative housing and communities like where I represent, the thinking I have is that I want them to have access to those same things. In fact, a lot of our cooperative housing buildings are in some of the neighborhoods that are the most desirable. And so that's my story, right? I didn't grow up in cooperative housing. I grew up in scattered site public housing. But the benefits to me, me and my family wouldn't have been able to experience them if it weren't for good, forward-thinking, progressive public policy, housing policy. And so that's what I'm hoping that we can do for the current generation and those that are yet to be born, I think it's not acceptable for them to just be thrown into a market where they're only going to be able to live in 3 out of 77 community areas in Chicago, or have to move 6 times before they turn 18 years old. That's not a society worth fighting for. And so I want people to have what my family had. I want them to have it even better. That's my story. If it hadn't been for that Supreme Court decision, I don't know where I would have grown up. And I honestly don't know that I would be sitting here before you right now as the first Black person to serve as state senator from the north side of Chicago, period, in a city that is highly segregated, that historically just has had a number of public policy initiatives that were intentionally racist, and that split up communities. I don't know that I would be sitting here, as the first. My dad was from Ethiopia, first Ethiopian American to serve in either chamber of the General Assembly. I don't know that I would be first openly LGBTQ person elected to the Illinois Senate. I mean, all of that is a result of where I got to grow up and the kind of amenities that were in the neighborhoods where I grew up, the kind of people that were part of my village, is all that shaped me and allowed me to be here fighting for the next generation and fighting for cooperative housing specifically. So that I know I said I was going to give you the pithy version. That was longer than I thought it would be, but it's important that look, I feel like in these kind of initiatives, people want to know why people are fighting for the things they're fighting for. There's a lot of politicians that are pushing a lot of initiatives and they stop thinking about it the minute the screens go off. I want you to know this is the stuff I think about all the time. Like when I walk through my district, I'm always thinking about who's going to get to live here in 20 or 30 years. And when I think of the who, I'm thinking about all people, white, Black, Asian, Middle Eastern, Central American, Latin American, in every single spectrum of the economic order. And so people who are disabled, people who are visually impaired, people who don't speak English, LGBTQ communities, our seniors, right? Our seniors, love our seniors. The reason that my district and our north side neighborhoods are, particularly north of Irving Park, are still, have some pretty diverse pockets is because of innovative housing that, a lot of it was built a generation ago, and it's dried up, right? And now we're fighting actually to maintain affordability in a lot of these buildings. And so, you know, I want to make sure that we're preserving existing cooperative housing. We're building new cooperative housing where we can. You know, there's been conversations around setting up a land trust in this area to start proactively acquiring parcels and making them available for low and middle income homeowners. So that this doesn't become an area where you know, you can only, you know, you got to be able to afford a $1.5 million home. So, you know, that's the vision. That's what I'm fighting for here. And this, like I said, this is stuff I'm thinking about all the time. It's not just, you know, when the daylight is shining. And yeah, that's it.
Thank you, Senator. And you know, what you say, I always try to capture what is the action here. And so what I heard you is that the objective, good, right? Good policy takes time, takes thinking, takes all of us to be able to help shape it. And then you said action, forward moving, right? And forward moving policy does not stay stagnant. It's not just for today. It even thinks about the future. And I love the way you say 2 years or 200 years, right? Because when we're gone and when we're not here, it still should be forward thinking policy that keeps us here. And so really appreciate you, your work, your tenacity. And Janae Moreno here, Center for Shared Ownership, challenge accepted. And I hope our partners here on the call, as well as with the others that we will be bringing on board, will be able to meet the challenge and make you proud of what we come up with. I know Ayana's been having some freeze, Rachel. Again, thank you, Senator, for your remarks. I hope you could stay a little while, but we do understand. You may have to jump. Heather, good to see you.
Can I, real quick, pardon me for indulging, could I do a screenshot of all of us here so we can make sure that we let our constituents know that this task force has started convening? I'm gonna just count to 3 and then we'll just do the deed. So, 1,
We
2.
need people, Senator, we need everybody to get on the screen for.
Oh, yeah, right.
We don't want Dave.
That's kind of important.
Yep.
All right.
Video on.
2 more seconds.
All right. Look at this.
That's great.
All right, Sandra, you're gonna join us? All right, cool. I'm gonna
She
count.
said she may have to step away.
That's okay. That's okay. We got a lot of beautiful faces here. All right, I'm gonna count to 3. 1, 2, 3. All right, I'm gonna do one more just in case there was somebody blinking. All right, there we go. Hey. All right, 1, 2, 3. All right, I think we got a couple good shots there. We'll make sure to send those out to everybody too. Appreciate it, everybody.
Thanks, Senator.
Senator Simmons, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate your inspiration and your vision. It's very powerful. And as Janae said, she's got the baton and we're going to run with it.
All right, I so appreciate it.
Good luck governing.
Yes, well done.
There was never such a thing.
We're watching. You're doing great. Okay.
Thank you.
Have a good holiday season.
You too. And we'll be able to hang out for about 15 minutes, and then we've got a interdepartmental meeting that starts a little after 2, but we'll hang out for a bit. And I'm gonna keep coming into these. I told Calvin Holmes I want to stay engaged with this work, and so I'll be in and out. I'm hoping I can meet with you in person at some point in the spring when I'm not in the legislative session. So I won't be far.
Great.
So I'd like to take a moment, Ayana, if you could put up the dates, just to give you a sense of where we're going, so that we're all sharing the same picture of timelines. And then we'll come back. We're looking at a meeting in January, one in February, one in March. That will be determined largely out of the next exercise we're going to do. Are those dates available? Oh, there we go. Okay. They're in the chat, everyone, not on a slide. We are looking at having a period of public comment where we would, share a draft with interested parties and allow for people to email or talk with us about their viewpoints. And the first 2 weeks in April having a draft final action plan, specifically on state funds, but also other sources of funds that as a group we can identify. We will send out calendars of these next 3 meetings so that you have them. And there are 10 other cooperative committed people and experts that will be at the next couple meetings that weren't able to be here today. And that really goes into kind of what we want to spend the rest of the time talking about is what we as staff can pull together in terms of inviting experts from other places or pulling together what we know to have fuller discussions about what's unknown. And so we're all sitting here from different niches, different stakeholder groups. We're totally aware there's been other CWB advisory group work, UIC-led advisory group work, and we want to make sure that we're not duplicating time, but also directly getting to what people want to know. And that isn't answered for you. So the floor is open.
So, Rachel, I just want to acknowledge a couple of things that we do have in our favor for the task force and the effort. One is in terms of support for shared ownership. We have the shared ownership Housing Preservation Fund, where the city of Chicago has committed $15 million to pilot some work in South Shore specifically. And we're talking about a neighborhood that has 190 cooperatives and condominiums. So we're going to be quite busy there. So that's at least some public sector commitment to the challenges of managing properties that have deferred maintenance and lots of structural aging issues. So that's a success, and we applaud the city for being a great partner in implementing this program. And we now have, and I'm going to turn to Cami to correct me, but we've got the potential to have $5 million in funds from the state of Illinois for the Cooperative Housing Fund. And we're going to use this task force to continue to offer IDA on ideas on ways to make the best of those resources. So we've got the state, the city and the state committing resources to improve the quality of life for shared equity housing. And that's a good start.
Itai?
Thanks, Rachel. I think the senator has provided how housing is foundational to one's upbringing, growth, success. And I think that is really very important to highlight at every turn. Where somebody grows up, the community and the school, if those are really not aligned well, the success is not going to be forthcoming. So that, I think that is a very important point. And I'm very happy to hear from Mike about that bringing. I think it might also be good, helpful for this group to understand exactly what the goal of this convening is, what is the ultimate outcome we expect from this gathering, and who is the target. I think the process is good. I don't know if the time frame is adequate. It really depends on what the expected outcome is. Where do we want to be come April 2024? Thanks.
So the charge that we've been given by Senator Simmons is to have have a document that's available before session starts in May. And so that is what the task force is based on. You know, there's already a substantial amount of co-op expertise in our community, right? We're not New York City, but we have 200 co-ops in the city of Chicago, and we have another 100 in Cook County. So, you know, there's a real estate niche that exists, and many of us have been part of building new programs before, right? So the question of how to layer resources together to meet the need, we you know, many of us have done this, and so we're just gonna get it done, Itai. Wes?
I guess the question I have is, and some people here may already know this, what would be, I'm sure that there's been a scan of the policy, public policy that has supported cooperative housing to this point. I guess what I would want to know is what are the gaps that need to be met that I'm assuming that's going to be addressed in this document that you're trying to put together. So is there a sense right now, sort of a preliminary sense of what the gaps are that need to be addressed? And then those gaps that we identify, how, you know, what I'm thinking that this group will help sort of strategize on how to get to answering those gaps. But first of all, I just kind of, is there a sense of what the gaps are at this point?
Anyone?
Rachel, I can respond to what I think some of the gaps are. So, one of the big ones is for co-ops is the availability of share loan financing that is just not readily available at this point. And so there need to be tools or there needs to be vehicles that, you know, make where people are able to get share loans as easily as you are able to get a mortgage, what have you. And that's just not available at this point. Quite frankly, the other big gap that I think exists is that people don't understand co-ops. And so in dealing with real estate brokers and all, these are just not marketed as viable housing options. And so those are two big ones that I would just highlight.
Thank you. Thanks, Linda.
And go ahead, Yvonne.
Yeah, like similar to Linda, I was going to mention the share loans. I know that that's something certainly for the Pilsen Housing Cooperative we run into, and we did work with Congressman Jesus Chuy Garcia on the federal side. There's a proposal along with, I know Ray is here from the Resurrection Project, to put $1 million towards share loans that then the Resurrection Project would manage, and that we understand is kind of coming through the pipeline. But of course, you know, that's a small drop in the bucket, as Linda's mentioning, right? Like it needs to be as possible. And so I'm glad we have, you know, PNC here on the call to think and help think through that space. And I don't know, you know, how much of that is a legislative kind of question. But then another thing that I would just note that PICO has also worked with Therese Ma. We have a House Bill 3817, which required IDA to devote 1% of its budget to support for co-ops. But of course, that doesn't, you know, there's a couple of things there. What is 1% of the budget? And then also, what will that support look like? So I think, you know, there's some further work that needs to be pulled together there to really help, you know, kind of clarify what would be some of the best use of those funds in the future, right? So that one is definitely within the kind of policy landscape space, and of course to make sure that they're actually, you know, following through on that, right? And it doesn't just become a bill that exists but doesn't doesn't really move things in the actual physical landscape of Illinois. So those are two things that just immediately come to mind.
Agreed. And we do have partly from what Yvonne just shared, a longer list of short-term policies, medium-term, long-term. But as a group, for us to build work towards some action items and priorities, we want to be able to specifically bring content to the next meeting that can address some of the greatest challenges we have. That might be staff from New York State, which has really unique grant financing programs. HUD is invited. They will be here next time. We could invite someone out of the Secretary Rep's office to speak to the needs we have here in Chicago. I'm just trying to kind of stimulate some thoughts here. Specific to co-ops, go ahead, Senator.
Yeah, one thing I wanted to offer is that, so we've got a revenue source to seed up this program. So 1% of the Illinois Affordable Housing Fund can be used starting after May in the next budget for so-called cooperative housing preservation and development construction. So I feel like one useful bit of data might be, what is the current market for so-called cooperative housing and various markets across Illinois. Right, Chicago is really where, and Cook County is where we're principally focused, but this is, keep in mind, a statewide initiative. And some of the suburban areas are starting to feel the economic impact of overdevelopment, particularly out in the Fox Valley area. So, some folks may want to focus on those areas too. But what I'm suggesting is maybe in this white paper, giving the state some sense of how to package these incentives or these dollars that will become available for cooperative housing. So, is that startup financing? Is that financing for acquisition of parcels and areas where the land values are really high, like where, a lot of the area where I represent? Is this going to be financing tools for deferred maintenance, as Calvin just mentioned, in some parts of the South Side? You've probably seen that. Yeah, I think you're seeing it up north too. There are older buildings that maybe have forgone some upkeep that can make all the difference in those buildings living another 50 years. So we know that those are high level needs, but I think having a sense for dollar values for what it may cost for some of these larger buildings could be actionable for IDA to have that.
So Senator, if I may, just to look at what's in the appropriations language, it just says $5 million. So, we can't get very far with $5 million. So I'm assuming that the assumption is that we can go much higher than that in terms of what IDA might be able to pass through this program.
I mean, that's a seed amount, and that 1% of the Affordable Housing Fund will probably be tantamount to about $5 million year over year. So I think that's where we're starting, but these initiatives can grow, right? I mean, if you come back with a actionable set of recommendations that we go right through that 5 million in the first year, and in year 2 that becomes 10 or 15, right? We can always come back to the table and look for other sources of funding. I want to underpromise. I don't want to say what I've learned not to say what I can do in successive budget years. That's never a good look for a legislator. But I think the political will is there for myself and a number of other legislators that represent areas where in fact, most legislators from the Cook County area will acknowledge that there's a housing crisis. And so I think the political will be there to be on the hunt for additional revenue dollars as needed in future budget years.
Understood. Thank you.
Other questions, comments, thoughts?
This is just a thought here. This is Brell with NASCO, and we work throughout the rest of Illinois too. We've got folks in like Champaign, Urbana and stuff too that we work with. So I'm actually really interested in like recognizing the real like benefit that we have right now of this 5 million as like targeted for this type of development. But housing cooperative development writ large like often just doesn't get through threshold when development subsidy for affordable housing generally is being considered because either the developers are seen as not having sufficient scale like development expertise, or the model itself doesn't map directly onto standard like development subsidy models. And so I recognize the 5 million is good, but what I would really like to see is a little bit of a breakdown of the barrier to standard affordable housing financing, and making it either in like scoring or modifications to the developer qualifications to recognize, not like saying that they should be like less qualified or anything, but recognizing that developers that are providing innovative housing options, which these are, and permanently affordable housing options, which these are, should be provided some additional like higher scoring in their applications and general housing affordable general affordable housing applications when they're competing in the competitive market, because it would be really great for us to be able to compete on the merits rather than just on the threshold requirements that often leave out co-ops.
That's great. I hope I captured that in the chat there, in the note, bro. Yvonne?
Yeah, that also, what Brel was saying also made me think of some of the things that have been good kinds of barriers at times for PICO, and a lot of that has been, especially in terms of, as a community, we've been able to get some of that startup going, but to kind of think about the long-term implications, the ways in which, thinking about policies that might have benefits in relation to, for example, taxes, right? The ways in which then, if really it's, going to be permanently affordable, some of this housing could be lasting here for 200 years, the way it might need some of that support, especially as neighborhoods around it really transform and the property values increase, then, why not really have the sort of property taxes be tied to the limits, right, on the affordability, or the ways in which having those kinds of policies might also support a long-term vision. And for us as well, I know within the city, the working with the Department of Housing, they connected us to the ARO dollars, but the real challenges there in terms of making any of those projects happen, right? So sometimes even the kind of existing spaces that are supposed to help with that kind of startup costs, and to kind of move those projects along, aren't really doing what they're meant to do. So even as the developers are saying, rather than create our 10, 15, 20%, affordable housing within our development, right, we're just going to pay a fee and get out of it, but those dollars aren't really then making it into affordable housing or co-ops. And so, I think there's a lot of space there to rethink that in many ways. And I'm sure folks here may have better ideas than I about some of that, but within PICO, we've been talking about what if the actual cost to opt out was so extremely high that it actually, really pushed folks to either do it, or that those dollars were significant enough that they could be passed on and really make a difference as far as other people building co-op housing.
So that triggers just a couple of things to me, if I may, to jump out is, are there other incentives that need to be in place? Could be in tax policy, might just be in revenue, could be from the private sector. I think the absence of the private sector acknowledging cooperative housing is a barrier that needs to be addressed. And there's also, you're picking up on a public awareness, educational issue is I guess the preservation and issues jump out. Is there a way to make cooperative housing create the developer appetite to use that as a strategy to preserve affordability?
I don't know. I'm going to jump in on maybe like responding to that last question, though. I think you're going to get private developers interested if it's going to increase the likelihood that the development is going to move forward, which I think is tied to increasing the the scoring on subsidy applications. So if cooperative housing ends up being the easier route, or the financially easier route, then private equity is going to be interested in it, but not if it's going to decrease your scoring or make it make it a worse ROI.
Good point. Thanks.
But it's a a good observation, of course, that an low-hanging fruit is always to look at current city and state programs and make sure that co-ops are included, right? That's something we can win on easily on policy, but there's no question that different programs might have bad consequences, right? And there's plenty of work going on to evaluate the ARO, that's for sure. But Yvonne will make sure to invite you to the ARO complaint sessions. There's so many.
And Rachel, do you know if the city of Chicago is including in its current 5-year housing plan that's being finalized right now, cooperatives as a must in that plan?
I have no idea. No idea whatsoever.
Gotta find that out.
Good question. I'm sure ADUs are in there. Other pressing things that'll help us organize the next 3 sessions?
So Rachel, let me jump in if you don't mind,
Please.
just because I know we're getting close to our time. It's 2:16 right now. So, I've heard a couple of things, right? I've heard the policy piece, which we always talk about, but again, I'm gonna go back to what captured me with what the senator said, which was, how can we get to good policy that's forward moving? And I kind of begin hearing us like moving our brains around to think about that. This is why we need a number of sessions to kind of get us warmed up and get moving, right? I'm hearing the whole, how do we get the private market involved? And how do we integrate the needs of cooperative, whether it be share loans or asset management dollars that would allow them to continue into the future? I'm talking about real asset management dollars that see them for what they are, not just see them as a multifamily unit building, right? And then how can we look at our municipalities and other bodies, such as our taxing bodies, to belly up, right? To be participatory and be part of this movement. And then thank you, Kevin. I was biting my tongue on the education. I think across the board, there needs to be education, right? I think not only because, when I talk at things about, I usually go to where people don't necessarily know or like the idea of shared ownership. But when you say shared ownership, cooperative housing, or even condos, people talk about their worst nightmares, right? And so I know that at the state level, with the impetus of doing low-hanging fruit kind of rulings, we've gotten a couple of, association laws, HOA laws, and what have you, but they're not made to really promote what is really needed, which is the end user. You could build it, but if you don't build it for a target group, right, that end user will never come to the door. And what we know with the co-ops that have lasted through decades, right, if they've been affordable just because they exist. I hear the subsidy. I'm not saying it's not needed, but I also want to make sure that we recognize on a greater scale, they exist today, right? Because of the target population that says, this is where I will benefit, not at the end, not when I sell the property, but as time goes along and I have disposable income to do things that I need to do. And these are the things that I'm hearing you guys say. I got to push you guys a little further. And hopefully at next meeting, you will kind of get the juices flowing. We have a lot of data. So I don't want to say this report is going to give you data. I want to go back and say, how do we create policies and actions and movement that says, how do we show the banking world? This is, we're talking about something about shared, right? In the banking world, it's how do we capitalize on this? It's about we're in a capitalist space. How do we make it work? Or how do we get them to recognize, them being the financial institution, that this will make not only that property work, but the community which it's in be stronger because it's in that community. And I think that's some of what the senator had shared with us about his path to seeing the impact of this kind of housing in his community. So again, how do we do that, right? And how do we get not so much data, but ideas, right? I think some of us have gotten shy about dreaming, right? But as I see Steph on the line and I see some new names I don't know, dream with us, right? Your new eyes. We're old birds who have kind of beaten the path, and we're going to keep saying the same thing. My story, everybody knows, is education, education, education. Why are not the certified home ownership counselors giving as much time to people understanding what is a cooperative? Why would you want to be there? What does it look like, right? Why are we not giving it as much time so that people have, again, the knowledge and choice, right? And so, again, there's a lot of things we can do, but I know that there is a moment in time and, we're all busy. But what I'm going to ask you before our next meeting is to dream with us. Dream, right? And if there isn't anything, and I'm going to try to make it as anonymous as possible, right? I'm going to ask, our group that's pulling this together to send with our summary notes an anonymous page, because I need your dreams, the impossible ones, right? So that we could look at how can this task force look at the knocking off that I am and put the possibility there, right? And that's what I'm asking for. And I think that's the opportunity that we have before us. The opportunity that, as you know, with trends, right? Unless they get a woof, it quickly dies. And we'll go back to saying, remember right out of COVID, everybody wanted to do something about it. Every municipality was trying to do something about it. Everybody wanted to put some money in it, right? I don't want that to be the story. I want the story of today to be, because we dared to dream and push the envelope, right? Because of that, right? We got 2, 3, 4 things out of it, whatever those things are. Be it share loans that we can go to a bank and use our credit status, be it better subsidies that work in tandem with this kind of development and respect that the shared ownership owner is an owner, right? Be it that municipalities recognize having a cooperative or cooperatives in community is an economic engine to that community to stabilize it. Yes, whatever it is, dream with us so that we could get to some hard hit stuff. It is 2:22. Unless we have some burning points, and I'm asking everyone to please chat us up. We have about 34 good chats going right now. And I'd just like to give us a moment just to be quiet. Think about it and put as much as you can in a chat before we begin saying our goodbyes. And by the way, I do have something I'd like to see this task force do, if it's at all possible. The minute it gets warm enough, a tour of cooperatives that have been around since. That's it. A tour of cooperative that have been around since. So that for those of us who don't know, who may think we know, for those that we know that don't know, right, that we invite them to see, to hear, to actually see where it sits in a community. So it's not just a thought that came out of some movement that nobody can really connect to because it's been so long. Is there a way we could do that? And that's my big dream, a tour. All right, let's take a quick minute and see if there's any chats that we want to add, additional comments. All right, I know that Ayana has had technology hit her. And so I'm gonna ask if Kevin or I know your name, Calvin, would want to close us out. Don't fight for it, gentlemen. Go.
So, folks, we really do appreciate your engagement in today's conversation. Sorry that Ayana's having technical difficulty, but our next call is on the 23rd of January at 9:30 in the morning. And we're also going to pull together an agenda and a thought teaser for that conversation as well. And we look forward to having everyone participate. And we will have 2 other meetings after that, and we'll have a very provocative report for Senator Simmons and for Ida.
That's a wrap. Makes sense. I think keeping the dialogue going, keeping the dream alive is where we got to move. It's a time. It's an idea whose time has come.
Awesome. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for coming. It is 2:26. I give you back 4 minutes of your lives. Get off the line right now. And again, thanks for joining us. We hope to see you. And let us know if there's someone that's missing. Send an email to Rachel or Ayana so we make sure that they're invited to our next session. Bye-bye.
Great. Thank you, everyone, for
Bye.
participating.
Thank you, everyone.
Hey, Brel, email me, okay? I saw your hand go up.
And happy holidays to everyone.
All right, let's
Bye-bye.
save this chat, y'all. Brel, you gonna email me your comment? I saw your hand go up, dude. I can't.
I pushed the wrong button. You're good.
Okay. Happy holidays to you.
See ya.
Okay, let's talk soon.